The primary responsibility for the safety of passengers on board a helicopter is that of the helicopter operator. Around the beginning of April, helicopter operators began to receive requests from duty holders for passengers to wear various forms of face mask. This had to be refused due to not knowing if they were compatible with the current safety equipment worn by passengers, for example, the survival suit, the life jacket, and the emergency breathing system. As PPE grade face masks are still required by NHS and care workers, an alternative form of acceptable face mask was sought, and the virostatic shield, or snood, was found. With the assistance of Reliant New Tech, full helicopter underwater escape trainer tests were carried out using the snood, fluid-resistant surgical masks, and two types of full surgical mask, the FFP2 and the FFP3. Both the FFP2 and the FFP3 were found to hinder the donning of the survival suit hood, therefore are not acceptable for use. The snood and the fluid-resistant surgical mask both passed the test criteria and have been accepted for use under specific circumstances by all the helicopter operators and the CAA. We went through the supply chain procedures to order sufficient snoods to be rolled out across the UK bases in a consistent manner, which began week commencing 27th of April.
The snood is being used or has been approved to be used in the back of the aircraft through two things. First of all, Reliant New Tech have done tests on the snood and some certain other masks to be used in the back of the aircraft. Some of those masks and face coverings have been approved. The snood's one of them, and the regulator is happy due to the fact that we've made sure that the snood doesn't impact on the donning of any emergency equipment such as the EBS or any other activity that needs to take place in the back of the aircraft, that we can safely use snoods as an additional barrier and a face covering.
There is no national or international guidance mandating the wearing of face coverings or snoods. However, there is advice from the International Oil and Gas Producers Aviation Subcommittee that wearing a snood places an additional barrier in situations where the 2-metre social distancing regulation cannot be implemented, for example in helicopters or aeroplanes. Like any face mask, the wearing of the snood does not protect the wearer, but does limit exposure to others in the immediate vicinity.
Yeah, people couldn't have just used any old face mask. We do still have to make sure that, you know, whatever we use in the back of the aircraft, we can use safely. So that process of making sure that it didn't impede on safety equipment in the cabin, and also it didn't create another secondary hazard for the aircraft, such as foreign object damage, where these masks may, you know, come loose, come off, or be blown into the engine at some point. So, you know, you can't just use any mask in the back. We need to make sure that what coverings we do use are used safely.
There has always been open access on UKCS flights to helicopter crews from the cabin for in-flight communication purposes. However, with the existence of coronavirus, this has given crews concern of possible airborne moisture transfer. With a finite number of pilots, helicopter operators had to ensure that the crew had as little contact with the passengers and the cabin area as possible. Temporary modifications on all helicopter types by the insertion of a polythene shield were created by the respective helicopter operators' design departments and approved by the CAA as a matter of urgency. The barriers do not create a flight safety hazard for the aircraft, crew or passengers, and limits the exposure of the crews to multiple flights of passengers per day.
The barriers between our crews have been put into place after some careful consideration around, you know, how can we modify the aircraft in a safe way to protect the pilots at the front, but also provide a barrier between the pilots and the passengers. So it's been done through formal process. we've involved both local design and other third-party design to actually devise the screens that we've used on all the different types of aircraft. They're now in place on the AW139, the AW189, the AW175, and we're looking at the S92 currently across all the operators. So we've used formal design. We've had to move quickly. We've moved incredibly quickly in terms of getting the designs in place and the parts manufactured to put the screens in. We did this in alignment with each other as operators, but we also did it in alignment with the regulator. No, absolutely not. One of the considerations when we actually designed the barriers that we've put into place, in no way do they impede the ingress of the crew. So if there was a need under circumstances to evacuate the aircraft, the barriers would not affect the crew's ability to do that.
The travel questionnaire and temperature testing of passengers was introduced around late March for the majority of passengers. From the 23rd of March, when data gathering on COVID-19 flight and passenger movements was commenced, we've gone from a high in 1 week of 63 Category B and 56 Category C passengers to 7 Category B and 19 Category C passengers in weekend in 26th of April. Although only indicative, this is a figure that will be monitored over the coming weeks.
Yeah, temperature checking as an additional barrier has certainly been beneficial. I think the data point that I'd use to answer that question would probably be the COVID-19 flights that have been taking place. As you know, we started in March with COVID flights of different categories. They did peak at quite a high level in the 60s and the 50s. If you look at them today, they have reduced considerably. So the barriers we're putting in place are having an effect, and we're doing far less flights of potential or suspect cases from offshore rigs. Yeah, and I mean, all the operational staff within all the 4 operators are being protected as much as we can and keeping people as safe as we can. At the end of the day, the pilots and engineers are essential staff. So yes, we're temperature checking engineering staff, operational staff, pilots, along with all the other measures that you'd expect us to be doing on social distancing and making sure that we try and keep this essential resource as available as we can. The service we provide to off-court workers is an essential service.
The situation is changing rapidly, as you will know from media announcements. OGUK understand that testing for offshore workers is now available in certain circumstances. For example, if you or someone else at home have symptoms. And OGUK will be clarifying the arrangements for testing as we understand them in the near future.
Yeah, 5 weeks on, the helicopter operators on the airfield, all 4 of us have worked very, very hard to try and stay aligned on the measures and protections that we've put into place for COVID-19. Today, there is a high degree of alignment. There's subtle differences due to the designs and the way that we operate, the helicopter operations across all 4 operators. But in the main, we're constantly staying close to try and ensure that we don't create confusion, we stay aligned, and the processes and procedures we put into place are as similar as they can be.